Imagine yourself standing on the shore of one of the Great Lakes, maybe on a beach in Michigan or along the waterfront in Toronto. Before you stretches what looks like an inland sea. The horizon just fades into the distance, waves roll in toward the shore, and it's almost unbelievable that this isn't an ocean, but a freshwater basin connecting the US and Canada. The Great Lakes are the largest system of freshwater lakes in the world by surface area, providing drinking water to over 40 million people. They're not just a natural wonder, they're a vital economic, ecological, and cultural resource for both countries. Yet nowadays, more and more concerning conversations are emerging about them. Water levels are changing faster and more dramatically than ever before. Fish and ecosystems are under pressure, and the tourism industry is facing new challenges. In recent years, the water in the Great Lakes has been acting like it's on an emotional roller coaster. Just 5 years ago, around 2019-2020, the lakes hit record high levels. Some coastal towns in Michigan and Illinois actually saw streets flooded, infrastructure grumbling, and shorelines eroding rapidly. People in places like Cleveland and Chicago still remember those waves that got so high they flooded parks and roads. And it's not just a poetic exaggeration. Data from NOAA and Canada's Water Survey confirmed those levels broke century-old records. But then, just within a few years, everything flipped. By 2023-2024, the water levels in Lakes Huron and Michigan noticeably dropped. In some areas, beaches actually expanded by tens of meters, and boat owners suddenly found their docks sitting on dry land. Marina depths just weren't enough for normal navigation anymore. Shipping companies around places like Detroit or Duluth reported that vessels had to carry lighter loads just to avoid running aground. All of this directly impacted the region's economy, which relied heavily on water transport for trade and logistics. Scientists say this is a given example of how climate change is amplifying extreme fluctuations. Traditionally, Great Lakes levels moved within pretty narrow ranges based on rainfall and snowmelt cycles. But now with rising air temperatures, we're seeing hotter summers that speed up evaporation and milder winters that mean less ice cover. Without an ice cover, water evaporates even faster and lake levels drop. Then, if there's a period of heavy rainfall or rapid snowmelt in the upper Midwest or southern Canada, the levels can surge dramatically. This creates a pattern of sharp, almost nervous swings. These fluctuations have a direct impact on fish and aquatic ecosystems. The Great Lakes have always been home to an enormous range of biodiversity: walleye, whitefish, salmon, yellow perch, and more. Fishing, both commercial and recreational, brings billions of dollars into the region. When water temperatures rise, species that prefer colder water, like whitefish, are forced to retreat to deeper, less oxygen-rich areas, leading the population declines. As waters warm, we fish move deeper, where there's less oxygen, and that leads to a decline in their populations. On top of that, invasive species add even more challenges. One of the most infamous invaders is the sea lamprey, a parasite that entered the lakes through canals and over the decades has destroyed millions of fish. While efforts by the Great Lakes Fishery Commission have managed to keep its spread somewhat under control using barriers and treatments, climate change is giving other invasive species like the zebra mussel a foothold. Zebra mussels reproduce rapidly, filter huge amounts of water, outcompete native species, and alter the ecosystem. All of this also affects tourism. The Great Lakes aren't just a natural wonder, they're a huge recreational hub. Michigan's beaches draw in crowds of tourists from places like Chicago and neighboring states every summer. Cruises on Lake Erie have become a popular alternative for Americans and Canadians looking for something different than an ocean vacation. And fishing tours in Ontario are a whole business of their own, bringing in millions of dollars to local economies. But when water levels are too low, beaches can turn rocky, and tour boats can't easily set out. When the levels are too high, the beaches erode and waterfront businesses lose infrastructure. Both century has put a dent in tourism and the sense of stability that people have about these lakes as a reliable vacation spot. For over a century, the US and Canada have jointly managed the Great Lakes through the International Joint Commission, which was established back in 1909. Its role is to regulate the use of water resources, prevent conflicts, and find a balance between the interests of energy, navigation, fisheries, and ecology. Right now, the Commission's under a lot of pressure. On one side, shipping companies are pushing to maintain stable water levels to protect the economy. And the other side, environmentalists and local communities argue that too much human intervention could harm the natural ecosystems. It's even more complex because the lakes are also a cultural heritage site. For Indigenous peoples like the Ojibwe and Huron, the lakes have always been the doors of spiritual and material life. Today, Indigenous groups are actively involved in discussions about preserving these resources, insisting that their traditional knowledge and worldview be respected in decision-making. For them, water isn't just a resource, but a living entity, and that perspective could play a crucial role in shaping future environmental policies. If we look back over the past few decades, we can see a clear shift. In the 1980s and 1990s, water levels were more predictable. But starting in the 2000s and especially after 2010, these fluctuations began. Rapid rains around 2017 to 2019 pushed levels to extremes, followed by a steep drop. This unpredictability is now one of the biggest challenges the region faces. There are several possible scenarios for the future. One scenario is that the current roller coaster of water levels will continue, causing ongoing problems for both the environment and the economy. Another possibility is that water levels could gradually decline if temperatures keep rising and evaporation increases. But there's also a more optimistic scenario. As global greenhouse gas emissions are reduced and climate change slows down, these fluctuations might stabilize at least somewhat. In any case, the Great Lakes serve as a kind of litmus test for North America's climate and environmental health. They remind us that water isn't a static or eternal resource. It responds to everything we do, from emissions to land use. And ultimately, it's how the US and Canada work together in the coming years that will determine not just the fate of the Great Lakes, but also the well-being of millions of people. Communities that rely on these lakes for drinking water, businesses tied to fishing and tourism, cities that need stable shorelines, and Indigenous peoples who see the lakes as part of their identity. All of them have a stake in this. The Great Lakes aren't just points on a map. They're a living system of a shared responsibility and a mirror reflecting how humanity is tackling one of the greatest challenges of our time: climate change.